computer. Everybody, this is Chris Mahan with the Lead Teen Podcast. If you are new to this podcast, Lead Teen Podcast is all about the child-parent relationship with an emphasis on parental leadership, something I feel we're desperately needing in this country. We see the effects of lack of leadership every day in America. And to share his insights on what he sees every day in the classroom, I have a special guest, Mr. Michael Brooks. He is a school social worker here in Florida. And I'd like to uh, let you know that I've known Michael now for over a year. And I went to his school and was a speaker there. And that's how we kind of connected. And since then, we have become fast friends and we have a lot of, so many similarities in how we think kids should be um, led today, what's missing in their lives, and some of the solutions to the problems that we see. So, Michael, how the heck are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. So it's been a while since we've been able to do this. So I'm so glad we finally be able to get you on this podcast and
Yes.
get your insights and your information out to parents of the things that you see every day in the school, in the community. I know you do a lot of work outside of the school, and we were talking the other day about what's happening with kids and parents, and what can we do to help, make things better. And you came up with a really good um, topic for today, which is connectedness, to be connected. And I really like that idea, so I said, let's do it. So give me your thoughts. What does it mean to you when you say to be connected? What are some of the areas where kids are missing connection?
When I say connectedness, basically I'm focusing on relationships. I think relationships are missing outside of the family, but dealing in the school system, I feel that teachers and staff members, if they just work on the relationships with their students, it increases a more positive outcome, whether it's academic, behavior, attendance, everything that the school system wants in a child. And since I work at an alternative school, I deal with a lot of at-risk students. So I definitely have challenges when it comes to that aspect. So even more so, it's needed amongst our staff to connect with those parents, connect with those students, because when they come to my campus, I truly do feel that we're a second chance school. The parents are looking for solutions, and sometimes the students, they don't know what to expect. If we come as a team working together, I feel, and what I've seen in my experiences, better outcomes have come about by building this connectedness, this relationship between parent and student and school.
That's a lot for people to take in, but I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you 100%. I've been saying the same thing for many, many years. That I grew up in a small town in Michigan, and for me, a town of 8,000, everybody knew everybody. We had one high school, one junior high, and the sports teams were all supported by the local businesses. All the high school kids worked at local businesses. So there was a lot of connection there, and there's a lot of pride in where you went to school in your
Mhm.
town. And I think part of what's happening today when it comes to the lack of connectedness, when it comes to schools in community, is here in Florida, you've got a high school every 4 miles, maybe every 6 miles. And I know on this side of the county, there's probably 10 high schools in this area. And that's kind of hard for me to think, how do these kids get connected to their own school when they're intermingling with so many what would be called rival kids? Because back in my day, you had your rivals from the other town, and you were
Right.
very, very prideful of your area. Here, everybody's kind of there's no real connection to one thing. Um, Everybody's just so close and going all over the place that they don't really have that connection to maybe a school like we did back in the 70s, 80s, maybe early 90s. Not to say that's a bad thing, but I just think that when you grew up with one high school, you really connect to that school the football team, the basketball team, the pep rallies, the things that you did for your school and your community was tied into that one high school. Here,
Right.
communities are tied into multiple high schools and spreading out their money and their time. And I think for a lot of young kids, maybe that's part of it. They just don't feel connected to a school enough to want to go. That's just one of my things as far as the schools. What do you think is happening? Um, as I always talk about parental leadership, what is happening in the homes with the kids that come to your school? Like, what are some of the top characteristics of a kid that comes to your school? If you could just say, "Hey, I don't have to, I don't have to really know much about this kid to know there's probably this, and this happening in that home." What are some of those characteristics?
Well, Chris, some of those characteristics that the students that come to my school focus on three major topics, and that is inadequate resources, unstable living conditions, and many a time some of these students have mental concerns. They've been traumatized by past experiences or ongoing experiences. So these are the students that we receive on our campus. And because of their bad experiences from their home campuses, or whatever the case may be, of what brought them to us, that lingers. And something that you just mentioned about the pride that many of us used to have when we belong to a certain school.
Hmm.
Key word I want to focus on is belong. And that is what that connectedness does. It gives you a sense of belonging. And many of our students, I feel, they don't have that sense of belonging. So if you don't have that sense of belonging, it's hard to be prideful about where you're going and have that ownership of I'm glad to be here. So that's where
Right.
that connectedness comes in, and it definitely pays dividends when it's activated with the student towards a school versus them. I don't want to go to school. I hate the teachers there. So studies have shown one positive influence or adult in a child's life reaps so much dividends. And that's where that connectedness comes in the school system amongst teachers, staff. It could be a PE coach, it could be a custodian, but it's just long as that kid feels as if they belong, I believe that that pride in which you were talking about earlier, that gets activated and it changes things like academic attendance, behavior, and so forth. But there were so many challenges that our kids go through. And when they come on our campus, these are the things that we have to dissect, identify, build strong relationships because many of these kids have trust issues.
Right.
And because they have trust issues, they're very hesitant. They have these walls built that they really don't want to become vulnerable to an unknown adult or to a school as such as the one I work at, being an alternative school. They feel like they're confined and they're labeled as bad kids. And I constantly have to remind not just the students, but adults too. There's no such thing as a bad student or a bad kid. There's either good choices or poor choices. And whatever which one you use to most, that's how people are going to perceive you as. So I let students know just because you're at my alternative school, don't look at yourself and label yourself with that negative self talk. I try to let them know to tap into their gifts and their talents and talk to them. Sometimes I get referrals when a student comes to me, and because they're used to being a negative interaction between themselves and an adult, when they come and talk to me and others at the school as well, I use a strategy where I don't even talk about the negative behavior or why they're in my office. I get to know the student. I kind of use it as a Wi-Fi code, so to speak. When we go to a hotel or a new location and we don't want to use our own data, we're intentional about finding a Wi-Fi code so we can connect. So I kind of look at it that each one of our students have a Wi-Fi code, and we have to be intentional to connect with them. What are your interests? What are your hobbies? What are your goals? Once you find out what their goals and hobbies are, and they open up and they see that you actually care, I don't just use it for that one moment. Guess what? I use it 2 days later. Hey, how's your team doing? So they're not
Mhm.
expecting it. I'm building my relationship with them. So that's all part of that connectedness. Then sooner or later, that student starts feeling like, I belong here. I have that positive person that I can look up to or come to when I'm having an issue or concern, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be even school related, but I can sit down and talk to that adult. And that is what's missing many a times amongst our schools, no matter whether an alternative or a regular school. And I feel once we focus in on that dynamic, that game changer, I think we'll have much more better outcomes for our students these days.
Very, very well said. You made a couple points in there. I tried to make some notes. One of the things that I cannot stand is the labeling. And I do a whole chapter on my book. I talk about it all the time. You've heard me talk about it all the time. When we label someone the bad kid or the bad school or whatever it is, there's already a preconceived notion of what their behavior is going to be. And therefore, then they feel like they have to, well, they've already think I'm a bad kid, so I'll be a bad kid. There's a lot of studies that were done years ago where they would take the kids that were lower ranked as far as grades or whatnot, put them in with a teacher and say, I got you this year because you're the very best of the school. And the kid's like, what are you talking about? You guys are the best. I'm so glad that you're in my class because you were the most well maintained and behaviored kids. And these were the bad ones. These were the kids that were bad. And then the
Mhm.
kids that were the better ones, they reversed it and they were like, well, you guys are over here because your grades are off and whatnot. And they saw the flip. Terrible experiment, which
Right.
they did some bad experiments back in the 70s, but terrible experiment. But it went to show that when you label someone good, bad, or indifferent, they begin to act that way and to believe it. And therefore they say, well, I have to they already expect bad things from me. They don't expect anything good from me. So it doesn't matter because no one cares. Right. I think that's one of the biggest things about connectedness too, like you were saying about the trust is actually showing and through example young people that you actually care about them and you
Mhm.
want them to succeed. A lot of these kids that I've seen, and you probably as well, they don't get that at home. And their peer group is probably the same type of peer group. So they're all kind of just, talking the same garbage to each other. And when there's maybe a parent missing or parents are just at home, but they're absent, they're there, but they're not really involved. Again, these kids are feeling like, what's the point? I'm labeled as a bad kid. I know this is wrong. I'm in the bad school. You and I talked the other day, and you said that. So I told you that I look at public schools, prison prep. There's police officers and
Mhm.
gates and fences and everything else. And you had made the point. You said, well, you know, our school or a school like ours or like just any school, they can have that appearance, but we want the kids to feel, that this is where they need to be. This is a good place,
Right.
and we you know show them they can make the honor roll. We show them they can do things. So although the appearance of the school looks kind of not so great, I can look at any school in this area, quote unquote, good school, bad school, and they've all got fences, they've all got cameras everywhere, they've all got police officers in schools, they all have these problems. So it doesn't matter where a kid goes to school. There's no socioeconomic background. It says good kid, bad kid, this, that, or the other. Um, and hold on, I just got a restart notification on my computer. How do you go about, besides the connectedness, how do you go about, or maybe the staff go about of helping these kids realize that although they're in an alternative school, that's not the
Mhm.
end of the road for them? And second question, how long do they stay at that school? Like, are they there for the rest of the year? Are they there for a quarter, a semester? What is their their time with you? How much time do you have with each kid?
Okay, good question. Most of the time, the students that come to our campus, for the most part, they're with us only for a semester. So
Okay.
we have very limited time to get them back on track because our school is a second chance school. It's not to keep the students, it's for whatever the reason why they came to us, refocus them so they can basically reflect on why they're here and how to change that behavior so they can function properly when they get back to their home campus. So we have to move fast. So what
Okay.
do? We try to do our very best to basically reframe their mindset about school. So when they come on our campus, we let them know, I don't care what brought you here. All I care is how you move forward from this point on. So
Oh,
now the kid kind of gets that confidence of, you're not going to hold my past against me of what I did. No, because my experience with you, I wanted to be that of a positive experience to let you know that you can change, but it's going to be up to you, your thought process. But you have to give that effort and to let you know that you are a smart student. All you have to do is a little bit at a time, each and every day. We don't expect you to flip on a light switch and change just like that. It's a process. This is a journey. And we let them know you can make honor roll. This may be the first time a student has ever heard that. You can make honor roll. And many a times we have an average of 20 plus kids make honor roll. And 99% of those students ask them, have you ever made honor roll before? The answer is no.
no,
So
I never did.
just that alone cements a positive experience in their mind that they can do it and they're not dumb or stupid of what they've been labeled at in the past. And whether an adult has told them that or them just having negative self talk. Now, when they leave our campus and go back to their home campus, yes, it's going to be a little bit more challenging because you have a larger population, but we give them tools in their tool bag to let them know how to advocate for themselves, how to ask more questions. The dumb question is not the question asked. Don't be afraid. And if you are afraid, it's okay to be scared, but do it anyway. That's the
Right.
definition of courage. So we
Right.
give them those social emotional learning tools. We also try to pour into them the essence of being accountable. You know,
That's very
be
important.
accountable.
I don't like.
Yes.
I didn't mean to cut you off. That's just you're saying all these little nuggets. I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta jump in here. Um, Everything you're saying is how do I say this? I sound like I'm being a parrot. Everything you're saying, I believe 100%. And um, here's a little backstory for everybody. I have spoken at Michael's school a couple times, like 4 times. And actually, it was just last week. It was my fourth time. And I was supposed to talk on colleges and trade schools and employment, things like that, life after college or after high school, rather. And as I was reading the room, because that's one thing that when these kids come in, you don't know what you're going to get. Are they going to be hyper? Are they going to listen? Are they going to be talking to each other? But the good thing is I can read the room and I can kind of keep them somewhat focused. And of course, Michael was in there, another teacher was in there keeping them focused. But one of the things that I get with these young kids is right away they come in with a little bit of attitude. What am I going to learn from this guy? What am I going to learn? Okay, I'll sit here for 20 minutes and listen to a bunch of babble. What am I going to get? And one of the things I try to give them is a little bit of my own history. And I really broke it down the other day. I wanted these kids to know that just because you might have a low GPA, just because you might have some struggles right now, That's not who you're going to be in 10, 15 years if you decide to change it. And, you know, one of the things that too I feel is really important is that as a community for connectedness, I believe that community leaders have to come in and help with this process. It's not just mom and dad in school and the student, it's the community has to help as well. And when I was growing up, I shared with this earlier in our pre-talk, when I was growing up in a small town, everybody worked at little local companies in high school. Everybody, we had one high school and everybody loved that school. We took pride in our school. We took pride in our town. There was a lot of connectiveness in that small town. And today, everything is so spread out and so just, you can't look without seeing another building going up or another housing development or something going up. And I think kids have lost that community connectiveness. Michael, what do you guys do besides? I know you do sometimes. We want to talk about how you bring the community in to share with these kids, you know, different things they may not even be know exists. What do you guys do to help with that as far as the community involvement?
This is what we do, Chris. We have a career counselor um, that invites community partners from throughout the community to come talk to our students. Because one thing we realize is we don't want to sell these kids a Disney dream. Now, we already know
Good.
that e- every student is not college bound or want to go to college. And we realize that. So talking to the students, because after you build that connectedness with them, you should kind of have an idea of many of their goals and desires of what they would like to do. And many of these kids, they want to do certain trades, like be an electrician, a plumber, or a construction worker. And maybe later on they can go to college, but many of them want to help support their families. So when
Right.
we invite many of the community partners to come in, these individuals with their expertise, they come in and they talk to these students and expose them to their gifts and talents that sometimes they didn't even know they had, whether no matter what it is. So involving the community and also knowing what's and who is in your community plays a major role now that now changes your attitude about school, changes your attitude about your education. I tell them many a times how much education is tied to the things they want to do. If you want to be a engineer, I expect you to at least be somewhat good in math. So
Yes.
now I don't need another
Not my
leaning
career
house
path.
of I don't need another leaning house of Pisa,
Right. Right.
especially my house. So my thing is so my thing is I tell them that even if you're not an honor roll student, even if you can't make straight A's, my point is you should at least be doing your best in those topics that support your goals and dreams. That's how that bridge of education helps you reach your goals. So I tried to tie things like that because it took me years to understand, even later on when I got in college, because I wasn't a good high school student. I made poor grades because there was no interest there. There was no curiosity there. But once you can tie a person, and like we're talking about our students, education to what they truly want, then school, or should I say education, becomes that much more engaging. Now I can ask those questions that's going to help me out. Now the student is rejuvenated, energized to the point where now they have that sense of belongingness, that sense
Mhm.
of, you know what, I need to make a good grade in this. You know what? How does science incorporate to what I want to do? How does English and history support the way I want to do? So once they start seeing how all these subject areas are integrated into what they want to do in the long term in life, that's when these students, the light turns on and they start improving, not necessarily to make honor roll, but still to be successful. You don't have to be successful to have an honor roll statement or label next to your name. I'm proof of that.
Yeah.
So
Well,
if that answers your question about the community exposing our students to uh, their capabilities and their gifts and their talents, definitely helps turn many of our students around, and also lets the community know where they can get more involved with the students. So that connection right there definitely is very helpful.
I think it's really important. And when I talk to small businesses and tell them what's happening, their first thought is always, "Oh, are these kids in jail?" That's always the first thing. Like, what's their record? What's the record? Just because a kid is in alternative school or has trouble at home doesn't mean they've, got a record. And some might, you know, that's just the reality of it. Statistically, some will. And I think that's when we have to be even more vigilant as a community to say, we need to stop this because here's what I tell people all the time. Our young people are the next generation. This might sound cliche and silly, but it's true.
Mhm.
And however our young people are going, that's how this nation's going to go.
Right.
And, you know, when we see young people today with these high levels of anxiety, high levels of depression, high levels of early crime, high levels of dropout, it just makes me wonder what's going to happen to this nation in 10, 15 years. Because these are the future workers, these are the future business leaders, these are future parents. Um, we need to be investing in them, not just money for education, but we need to be investing in them in time, like what you're saying, that connectedness, so that they will have someone to look back and go, you know what, I wouldn't have gotten through college or high school or life without Mr. So and so or Miss So and so or well, that Mr. Brooks, he made me feel good about myself. It was that one turning point. I talk about that, and I hate to keep bringing up my book, but it's true. Um, but in my book, I talk about support. Support is the S of the leader style. And for me, my support outside of my dad was Coach Taylor. He was a track coach. And in 10th grade, basketball was my life, and I got cut. Um, I got cut because my coach was afraid that my dad would get mad with him. Wasn't playing enough. It was a stupid thing. I didn't even know what happened in my freshman year. So my sophomore year, I get cut. And basketball to me was the only thing that kept me in school. It was my lifeblood. It was my breath. It was my reason for getting up. And it's what kept me staying eligible was well, I think I had to have like a 2.0 or a C to stay eligible to play. So whether it was track, whether it was basketball, whatever it was, I stayed in sport all year from seventh grade on up. And then 10th grade, I got cut. And my dad had moved to Georgia for work. My brother had moved to California after he graduated. And I felt very isolated in that little town. My connection to a lot of things had disappeared. My connection to my school had disappeared with the lack of being able to play and support them and wear the purple and gold every Tuesday and Friday and just it just tore my heart out. But track was my other favorite sport. So I went to track and I started getting ready for the spring training. And Coach Taylor was the varsity coach and he had heard what happened with basketball. And he came to me and he told me, he said, "Look, I need you to get your act together because I believe you can break the high jump record this year." And I thought, you kidding me? Are you seriously? Because it was 6'2", and I'd gone 6 foot the year before. And I thought, wow, he thinks I can break the high jump record. He goes, but you got to stay in school. You got to keep your grades up. I can't have you doing anything, especially running varsity again, which I'd done my freshman year, if your grades aren't right. So I stayed in school more for Coach Taylor than myself because I didn't want to disappoint him. He came
Right.
to me, he saw something in me. He put that spark in me, if you will, to say you're gonna clear 6'2", 6'3", You're going to break the high jump record. And I was like, wow, that's a lot of faith in me. Like that's over my head. Like, wow, it's. So I worked every day that winter and ran in the snow, did what I had to do because I could just hear in the back of my mind, Coach Taylor saying, are you studying? Are you doing your thing? What do you got to do? So when spring came and it was time to start running, doing our thing, I had a whole different pep in my step. I had a whole different sense of where I fit on the team, where I fit with the school. Like I lost basketball, but I got track. So I think what you're saying is absolutely just imperative. We have to give as a community, as adult leaders, we have to give these kids a sense of purpose, but also, like you said earlier, what are your talents? What are your goals? What do you want to do? I talk to so many kids, and the first thing they'll tell me is, I have no idea. I, no one's ever asked them. So I think what you're doing in the schools and with these kids and the approach that you're taking, not just you personally, because I've seen the other teachers there and I know they're all,
Mhm.
really wanting to have this happen. And I think it's amazing to see the transformation of a kid that goes from, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, they're like at a two as far as their self-worth or how they're thinking. And then with
Mhm.
just a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of support, a little bit of guidance, they're up to a 3 or 4 or 5. And it changes their entire trajectory of their future. Um, I know for me with Coach Taylor, it certainly did. And I made the hard choice after my sophomore year to move with my dad to Georgia. And I wrote Coach Taylor a card. And the night that we had our final dinner with all the award dinner, I gave him the card, and he started talking about somebody, just praising them and all these things. And I'm sitting looking around going, who's he talking about? Well, this is pretty good. And he was talking about me.
Mm.
And I darn near broke down in tears with what he was saying. And, you know, I felt bad for leaving. I had to leave to go with my dad. I had to go live with my dad. I just had to spend time with my dad. But I felt bad for leaving after all that Coach Taylor had done for me my sophomore year and how he believed in me. And I never forgot that. And so much so, I wrote about it, the whole story in here, because it meant that much. So, with that said, Michael, let's go to the third part of your trifecta we were talking about. That's the parents.
Okay.
What are you seeing that's missing in the homes or in the lives of these kids at home? What are some things that we just have to say this has to change? Parents have to get, their act together.
Yes. This has been one of my biggest challenges. I'm not sure if it's just at my school, but the more we get parents to be more involved in the education of their students, the more positive outcomes we have. What do I mean by saying that? When a parent or grandparent brings the student to school, we want to set the tone to let them know that whatever happened at the other school, we don't care about. We want to be involved in this young man or young lady's life and making sure they have the best educational experience. But we need help from home. We can't do it on our own. That kid spends way much more time at home than they do in school. Meaning what? Each period, but 45, 50 minutes. There's
Mm.
only but so much of an impact. But when that student knows that he's going to, or he or she's going to be held accountable at home with that parent, grandparent, or whoever's raising that child, the outcome shoots through the roof. Why? Because when parents are involved, they help us as educators, staff at the school to touch that kid in a way where it's not just accountability, but also help them toe the line with another C word, consistency.
Nice.
Many times these students, they come to our school because they don't really have that. structure in their lives. And what I mean by that is a consistent structure. As much as the students come to our school and it's like, oh, I cannot stand that campus or whatever the case may be, their attendance many a times is impeccable. It's very funny how a school that you don't like, but you attend. And what I had to learn and understand is even though they say this with their mouths, students want that consistency in their lives, that structure in their lives. And many a times school provides that. And because it provides that, that's why they come to school. And then to top it off, don't let them connect with someone at the school because now it's going to get even better. So when parents are involved, and that's been a bigger issue because that's one of the problems that we have. Many of these students, they're getting raised by their grandparents who are seniors and they can't really keep up with this younger generation.
Yep.
Uh, Many a times, a parent may be incarcerated on drugs or single mom or whatever the case may be. So, and there's many siblings in the house. So the parent has to, unfortunately, the truth is they have to pick and choose. You know, the younger ones or the teenager who I don't want to say given up, but it's only but so much they can do.
Yeah.
So when they come to school, we help out. Sometimes the only discipline that many of these kids get is when they come to school. We are their disciplinarian. So teachers wear many hats. It's so when you go to school to be a teacher, you didn't realize you're going to school to also be a disciplinarian, parent, and so
Coach.
forth.
Yeah. Shoulder.
Coach, yes,
Yeah.
all that, mentor,
Yep.
everything. So it's tough, but that parent involvement definitely weighs heavy so far as success. That's why I said that trifecta between the school, student, and parent is so much vital to the success of many of our students that we definitely try to incorporate a parent engagement program. We actually, my principal just mentioned this in our leadership meeting that doing our intakes, we're trying to get interest from the parent or those guardians to, if they're interested to learn different strategies and techniques
Hmm.
with their kids, to let them know. Because sometimes, you know, we're talking about education, but many times the parents need to be educated too so far as not to
Yes,
be
they
the
do.
perfect parent, but mainly to get strategies to how they can connect with their kids. Just because that's your kid doesn't mean you have a connection. And you have to understand that as a parent, don't take it as a slight, but just understand that as they get older, we have studies. It's all about stage and age of that kid. They're morphing. They becoming their own. They start trusting and believing their friends more than your than the rules and boundaries of the household. So there's many different factors out there, but the more I see the parent involved, the more that gap is closed so far as what activities, when I say activities like uh, uh, less activities that will get them in trouble and
Right.
more positive outcomes, whether it's in school or even in their personal lives. So definitely parent involvement. I can't stress that enough. Definitely helps us a lot when we call those parents and let them know, hey, Johnny was good today, as an example. And parents have told the teacher because they didn't answer the phone the second or third time, I thought you were calling me because I thought you were going to tell me Johnny was being bad. So those positive phone calls that we have incorporated in our school and studies have shown that that parent, because you want the parent to feel good too, because many
Right.
times the parent feels like they're failing their kids or they're a failure. But when I call them or when teachers call them and say, no, Johnny was good today, and I just want to let you know that. And it just really put things in perspective when a parent says, you know, he's in the 10th grade, and that's the first positive phone call I've ever gotten. So that is that connection, that trifecta that's not just with the kid, it's also with the parent. So now when I call that parent, they're quick to pick up the phone because they want to know what is going on with Johnny at school.
Right. That is really important. And again, since I've been working with families for the last 10 years, everything you're saying, I agree 100%. And I feel like we don't give enough, I don't say training because it does sound kind of negative, like you have to be trained to be a parent, but it is true. If you've never had to deal with things that young people go through
Mhm.
because you maybe have your own trauma as a parent, that you're still dealing with some things. And I find that parents that have the hardest time are the ones that are still having hard time from their own past. And it's hard to lead someone when you have trouble leading yourself.
Right.
Um, and today, with so many kids um, under the watchful eye of an older grandparent, the grandparents are now thinking, "Oh, it's this is what I did in 1975 or 1985,
Right.
so it must still work." Those
Right.
parenting ideas and they don't work anymore. It's a whole different ball
Mhm.
game. And kids are smarter. They have greater access to things. They have um, their attitudes are much more I don't care. And you can look at a kid today and say something to him that if it had happened 40 years ago when I was in school, you'd be yanked out and, embarrassed, in trouble. Here, they don't care.
Exactly.
So, you know what I mean? So for people that are older, trying to, I don't use like to use the word raise, I use develop, but who are in the care of, um, these kids are in care of their grandparents. The grandparents are stressed out. They don't know because well, one, they're worried if their son or daughter or granddaughter is having trouble um, with drugs or behavior, they're worried, they're scared,
Mhm.
um, because they know that, well, I'm old. What's going to happen to little Johnny if I have a heart attack? I'm not going to be around forever. How is he going to survive? What's going to happen to him? So there's a lot of stress on the outcome, future outcome. And one of the cases that we could clearly talk about from a couple of years ago was when the 6-year-old in Newport News, Virginia, took the gun to school, shot his first grade school teacher. And when that story broke, I remember going on Facebook and I think also here on this podcast and saying, when we find out what happened, it's probably a single parent. Here's what's probably happening in the home. And I hate to say it, but it broke right down to the to the stereotype. When a year went by and the case went to court, the mother went to jail. She just got another, I think, 3 or 4 years added to her sentence.
Mm.
But her grandfather, so the great grandfather, the little boy, said, I tried to help her. She was involved with this. She had multiple guys in the house. She,
Mm.
dropped out of school. It was just one bad thing. So this little boy was in this massively dysfunctional environment. And so at 6 years old, he takes a gun, takes it to school, shoots a school teacher. Luckily, she lived. But it's like, where was his mind at 6 years old to think, I'll take a gun to school, shoot
Wow.
my teacher? Like, this is how just out of touch this little boy was at 6. So the grandfather says, I've lost my granddaughter because she's now in jail. She's going to be in trouble. And the little boy is supposed to be in therapy for the next, I don't know, 10 or so years. What's going to happen to him? So this great grandfather was very concerned. And you multiply that by several million, you know, and that's what we have all over the country. When you have parents that are just not involved, it's got to make your job 10 times harder.
Yes.
When parents are not involved, it makes the only people profiting from this type of environment are cemeteries and courthouses and sheriff's offices,
Detention
um,
centers.
attention centers, DCF. These are the only people that are actually profiting from this behavior,
Right.
and it's all negative. it makes me wonder what has to happen as a society for us to all wake up and say we gotta all do better. Like what has to happen? I don't know if we're close to that yet or if something's going to happen, but we cannot sustain this type of um, less than leadership type attitude where all of us have to be involved because they say it takes a village to raise, a child. And I think in today's world, it takes more than that. It takes a village plus the two villages over. Um, so I'm wondering, like, I know we've been talking here for a few minutes. I don't know how long we've been going, but what are some things, Mike, that you would like to just, if a parent was listening right now, hopefully they're listening right now, what could you say to them to encourage them to be a better parent, but also to not be afraid to face reality of what's happening and ask for help with their
I
kid?
would tell, yes, I would tell them one, um, because I've experienced it myself, that there's no such thing as a perfect parent. I think many of our parents, they sabotage themselves thinking or looking at the development of other kids and from other families saying, why can't my kid be like that or be like her or him? Why can't they listen? But what we have to understand as parents is this here. All of our experiences, all of our kids' experiences are different. Once they leave the house, you don't know what they're being exposed to. The only thing that you can do as a parent is teach them the right way to go and communication. Keep an open line of communication. I think that is one of the biggest issues between parents and kids because you mentioned it dealing with the seniors.
Hmm.
It's not my way or the highway. It's here's are the boundaries and rules. If you have an issue with these rules, let's have a discussion. Let's have a discussion to the point of why. Why is that question that unravels and peels back the onion that maybe educate the student or your child? But also, guess what? Parents have to understand you can get educated by your child as well,
Yeah.
by the things that they're going through. Uh, so that open communication and not beating yourselves up thinking you have to be this perfect parent. I think you also, I would say, when there's services out there so far as how to talk to my teenage kid, and you have these professional experts out there in your community that are willing to speak with you and give you different strategies, I think you should open up because one thing with my kid that and with all my kids that I've had, no matter what I tell them, as soon as an outside person tells them the same thing and they perk up like they just heard it for the
Yeah.
first time, it usually just burns me up and like sends this like, are you kidding me? I've been saying this for years, and this person comes in, says it one time, and you act like you just heard it for the first time. And you have to understand that that's our kids. And
Yeah.
it's like that across the world. Many a times, our kids, they listen to us, they don't take it in because they feel as a parent, you're just saying that because you love me. But when somebody else says it, don't get offended. Just sit back and smile and just say, you know what? Whatever, how that seed can get watered and it goes into a positive direction, I'm just going to be happy with that. And just understand that somebody else kid may be coming to you asking you for something, or you may say something to them that parent's been telling them for years, and they oh, the switch just turned on. So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
Stop being offended when other people are planting positive seeds into your child because it goes along with that village syndrome.
Yeah.
This village raising the kid as the village, the input from the village helps raise. Everything that that kid learns is not going to always come from the home. So
And as long as
expose
it's
them
something
to that.
good and they're
Yes,
it's good
it's
and they're
not
accepting
perfect.
it. You know,
There
as long
you
as they're
go.
accepting it and it's going to work, then good, whatever happens, you know?
Yes.
So
So that's what I would say.
awesome. Well, Mike, this has been great. We're going to do this again. And I appreciate your time. I know we're on spring break, and so you're probably got other things to do. I know you're out painting earlier today, so I'll get you. But uh, I want to encourage everyone to reach out to us. If you have any questions for Mike, you can shoot them to me at leadyourteam@gmail.com. I'll forward those on. I'll get you connected to Mike if you want to do that. He is a uh, 25-year, I believe, 25-year Army veteran.
25-year Army veteran. Yes. And
He's got massive leadership. He's a social worker. He's got all kinds of knowledge. Um, so if there's anything you want to ask him about schools or different things within the school, because a lot of these things are cross country. So whether it's in Florida or Georgia or Alabama or New York, issues are all the same. And so human behavior really doesn't change the person. So if there's something that you have going on right now that you think Mike can help you with or myself, let us know. Leadyourteen@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to get with you if you would like to do a podcast with us or want have some information you want to share with your story. Again, reach out to us at leadyourteen@gmail.com. Be happy to put you on a podcast. Maybe Mike can answer some questions. We'll do something like that, and we'll keep this thing rolling because together we can make a difference for our community and for our kids and for the future of this country. It's very, very important that we all think about that. So again, my name is Chris Mahan. You guys have an amazing day. Michael, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
it's
Michael
been an
Brooks,
honor.
everybody. And we'll see. We'll have him on here again. All right. See you guys.